Hi everyone. Today we are diving into SQL injection, one of the oldest and most common web security issues that can be found in today's websites. Everything I show is for education only. Please only use it when you're authorized. Do not try this on other people's websites. Imagine typing something into a login box and it makes the website run a different database query than the developers intended. That's SQL injection. And attackers look for it because it can expose or modify data that should not be accessible by them. SQL, pronounced SQL, is the language used to talk to databases. When our app builds a query using user input, it must treat that input as data, not code. SQL injection happens when user input is treated as code instead of data, allowing the attacker to run the code and effectively retrieve data from the database instead of storing or doing what the query initially intended. This can cause data leaks, authentication bypassing, and even changing and modifying of records. So now let's look at a demo. So now let's look at the demo. So I have come up with this website. It's a locally hosted website and it's vulnerable to SQL injection for the demo. So in the backend, in the database, there is currently there are two users. One is Alice and the password is Alice pass. So you can see Alice was returned. And there is also Bob with Bob pass. Bob was returned. Now in SQL, you're gonna have strings. So they are simple, they are single inside single quotation marks. You have and or statements. So and just means that one condition that should evaluate to true, and both of these conditions, the conditions marked with underscore, should evaluate to true, and only then should it return the data or add the data, update the data, whatever. Or it should be an or statement. So as long as one of them is true, it should execute the code. And the last one is that there are comments. So basically, when you put double dash, everything from the point that you put these two dashes is considered as no longer code. It can literally be just a bunch of garbage, and the SQL will just be like, okay, I don't care. I don't need to read the line from here onwards. So now, since we know that there is a user called Alice, we're going to try and hack Alice first, and then we're going to try and hack the entire database as soon as we finish hacking Alice. So, say we know Alice is in the database. What we're going to do first is, as you saw me type, is to put Alice and end the string there, and we're going to see what happens. Okay, it's a lot of, there's a lot of backslashes and stuff. So let's try and understand what's actually happening here. We notice that, okay, so if we consider this just means that it is uh one single quote, and then there's Alice, then there's another quote, single quote, and then another single quote. So it's two single quotes, and then there's an password is equal to, and then a single quote, and then another single quote, and then we have the end of the unrecognized token. But what is happening? It feels a bit confusing, and just hold on. If you know basic programming, you will understand that this is one string because when it starts, when you start off with a single quote, that's considered as the start of the string, and then when you end it with another single quote, that's the end of the string. So then that means that this is one string, and then this is another string, and then there is a string that isn't closed. So this means that there is some vulnerability that could potentially be exploited. So now let's put username Alice. And then what we're going to do is we're going to remove this one as we had before. And we're going to say, remember so here you can see that the AND condition is being used. But what if we were to use the OR condition and we were to put something? So now we need another condition before we can So if you were to execute it like this, you'll see that there's another unrecognized token. And that's because now you're having an incomplete syntax. And of course, if you understand basic SQL, you'll be able to follow along. So Alice or, and then let's force it to be true. So let's just say 1 is equal to 1. And let's try and see, because effectively this should work, right? I mean, if you were to submit, oh, what happened? Okay, so let's go back. This is the command that we executed, and this is our output. Um, let's see. There's a single quote, start. There's another single quote, and then okay, so there's a lot of single quotes. There's a lot of string manipulation that you have to do. And so let's go back. Now let's cover what if, because now we have another open string, half open and closed string. So what if we were to convert these two into strings, but we leave the last one half open so that it gets closed when it reaches here. So it gets closed by this. So effectively, we have now injected SQL into the query that was being, and now as you can see, we have managed to hack Alice. We have gotten what we had to put Alice and Alice pass for. Now we have done it without needing a password, which is, as you would expect, a really dangerous command. So now let's go back to this query and let's actually remove this. There's another way. As you remember, I also talked about comments. And comments are really, really powerful because you can literally just say, I do not care about the password and I just wanted to return it to me. And now I have managed to hack Bob as well. And if there had been more users, all of them would have been compromised. That's how dangerous SQL injection is. And that is exactly why it is one of the things that most database libraries have been fixing or making sure that these SQL queries get executed safely. Where even if you were to put a string, single quote, they get treated as a and some quote, some and 20 quote. I think it's like this. This is what they get treated as. So they get treated as text. And that is how SQL queries are prevented, if I'm not wrong. If anybody is willing to, correct me or actually knows more about this, you guys can actually comment down below. But this is a very dumbed down version. They basically convert the quotes into a character that the library that doesn't get executed as code or isn't a valid code word or keyword for SQL.